Our baby Isaac was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and needed surgery for a tumor that took up half his abdomen. His odds were the flip of a coin. But at Seattle Children's, he had one of the most experienced pediatric cancer surgical teams in the nation, and they brought him back to 100% himself. Maybe 200%.
For kids with the most complex surgical cases, it's not about beating the odds, it's about changing them. Find your hope at seattlechildrens.org.
Did our consultation with Seattle Nanny, and then we hired the first one that we met. So that wasn't my intent by any means, but we were just really impressed with her. I think I did meet with one after her just because I was like, let's make Seattle Nanny do their job.
For sure.
But yeah, and then Isabel was interviewing other places and we didn't want to let her go. So it wasn't a long process for us.
Our baby Isaac was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and needed surgery for a tumor that took up half his abdomen. His odds were the flip of a coin. But at Seattle Children's, he had one of the most experienced pediatric cancer surgical teams in the nation, and they brought him back to 100% himself. Maybe 200%.
For kids with the most complex surgical cases, it's not about beating the odds, it's about changing them. Find your hope at seattlechildrens.org.
Did our consultation with Seattle Nanny, and then we hired the first one that we met. So that wasn't my intent by any means, but we were just really impressed with her. I think I did meet with one after her just because I was like, let's make Seattle Nanny do their job.
For sure.
But yeah, and then Isabel was interviewing other places and we didn't want to let her go. So it wasn't a long process for us.
Our baby Isaac was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and needed surgery for a tumor that took up half his abdomen. His odds were the flip of a coin. But at Seattle Children's, he had one of the most experienced pediatric cancer surgical teams in the nation, and they brought him back to 100% himself. Maybe 200%.
For kids with the most complex surgical cases, it's not about beating the odds, it's about changing them. Find your hope at seattlechildrens.org.
Hi, good afternoon and welcome. My name is Elaine Sulkin and I am the publisher and CEO of ParentMap. Thank you so much for joining us today for ParentEd Talk, How to Win at Parenting Without Losing Yourself, and with modern mommy doc, Whitney Casares. For those of you not familiar with ParentMap, just like our parenting partners who are joining us today, from across the country, it's our business to build inclusive communities that inform, engage, and inspire parents like you and your family while having hopefully plenty of fun too. We're all extremely focused on how to better serve families, and being the parents and publishers we are, we never settle for the status quo. And that means we have a deep commitment to our community connections, family advocacy, and the unique partnerships that allow us to build a better village for families. So before we begin, I'd like to just cover a few housekeeping items. Today's webinar is going to be recorded and may be republished for educational and promotional usage. And we will email everyone who registered a link to the recording after the event. So we also invite your questions. Please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen that we're sure you're very familiar with. And once Whitney is done with her talk, about 45 minutes, we will do a Q&A. So again, I really want to thank our media partners, Chicago Parent, Metro Parent in Detroit, Baton Rouge Parents, New York Family, and NOLA Family in New Orleans. And we also want to thank our event sponsors, as always, Seattle Children's Hospital, Seattle Nanny Network, Wayne County Community College District, Pacific Medical Centers, and Washington College Savings Plans, also known as WA 529. Dr. Whitney Caceres is the founder and CEO of Modern Mommy Doc and the Modern Mamas Club app. She's also the author of 2 books with the American Academy of Pediatrics, The Working Mom Blueprint and The New Baby Blueprint. She has a private practice in Portland, Oregon, pediatrics, where she and her husband are raising 2 daughters. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Whitney Caceres.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. I am so thrilled to be here. As we've all learned in the pandemic, we can't control everything, right? And so from a technical perspective today, I had a slideshow prepared for you all, but we're gonna just show the framework because we ended up with a few little technical difficulties, and I will talk you through it the entire time so that way you have a really clear understanding of what I am talking about, because I think that's the most important piece, is you being able to really visualize this for yourself. So like she mentioned, I am a CEO. I am the founder of of Modern Mommy Doc and of the Modern Mamas Club. And I'm also a mom to 2 kids, one who is 5 years old and a special needs kiddo who was just diagnosed with high functioning autism, who is 8 years old. And so I know a thing about trying to win at parenting without losing yourself. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I also did write 2 books with the American Academy of Pediatrics, The Working Mom Blueprint and The New Baby Blueprint, both really focused on helping moms in particular, but any parent, to thrive during this amazing but challenging and definitely stressful and sometimes all-consuming journey that we call parenthood. Now, in this presentation, I'm going to ask you to get pretty vulnerable with yourself and with me. We're going to ask some questions in the chat for you. And so I felt like it was important that I'm vulnerable with you. And so I want to let you in on a secret. And it's a secret that I don't tell many people, but I thought that you guys would be a safe community for me to share this with. And that is, I'm a believer. I love Justin Bieber. I know I shouldn't. I know I'm too old for it. I know maybe like I'm too in like the mom zone, but at this point, I just can't help it. And if I had my presentation, I would show you like this like amazing picture of Justin Bieber that I love. And if that was not enough to make you run for the hills, I have another secret that I want to share with you, one that's actually more serious. And that is my working mom life is full of stressors. So just like you all, I have things in my life that are difficult. I have things in my life that come up that I'm not sure exactly what to do with right at that exact moment that they hit. And so you might be thinking, why would this person come and talk with us about how to kind of deal with stress and rise above challenges if she faces them herself? And the real differentiator is that I used to let all of that stress, all of the things that I couldn't control in my life really define who I was. And I have learned a framework and implemented it with my own patients, with the parents that I work with my followers at Modern Mommy Doc, our community there, that makes it so that we're no longer defined by all those waves that come crashing at us, and that we can thrive versus just survive in parenthood. And so I want to ask you, and we'll put it in the chat, does stress, inner conflict, and burnout define your working parent life? And I will tell you, if it does, you are not alone. The vast majority of the parents that I talk to say that it does. They say that in addition to having difficulty carving out time for themselves and making space to do things that they love, one of the most difficult things that they have a hard time with is giving themselves grace, giving themselves self-compassion, and being able to kind of have that inner fortitude when things get rough. Now, I have not always been an expert in this area. In fact, I would say that inner conflict and burnout used to define my life too. My story is that I was a gung-ho working professional, one of those go-getter, like you just asked me to do it and I'm your gal type of people. From the moment that I can remember, from the moment I started walking, right? I always wanted to be a doctor. I love being with patients. I love helping to solve problems. I like being the person who was leaning in fully at work. I thought that that was amazing. I really have so much respect and so much gratitude for the working women and men who have come before me, and for how much more equity we're creating within the working world. And I really could do that pretty easily before I had kids without a second thought. You know, there's an extra email that needs to be answered at work, no problem. There's a patient that needs to be seen, no problem at all. And then I had my first baby. And my first baby was not like the books that I read, or like the presentations that I gave to other people, or like the advice that I gave to kids who came into my office, to parents in my office about their kids. My baby didn't sleep for more than 45 minutes at a time. My baby was colicky. My baby was spitting up all over all my clothes constantly. I couldn't soothe her. I didn't understand why all the things that I told other people to do weren't working. And then as she got older, she became even more extreme in her behaviors. She had difficulty with potty training. She had difficulty with tantrums. She really got anxious when we would be in a situation that might be more stimulating from a sensory perspective. And I had to pour all of my energy into helping her and helping my family. You know, I had another kid that came when she was about 3 years old, and I felt this immense pull toward my family responsibilities and the needs of my children, and also had this same remaining pull towards my work and what my responsibilities were there. I rose to the top at an executive level within my organization. People really needed me to continue stepping up. And I felt like there was this constant pull, like a yo-yo on a string. You know, I would just swing from one extreme to really leaning into my kids. I would swing to the other extreme of leaning into work. And that as an individual person, that something got lost there in the middle. Like I lost a piece of who I was. I stopped taking care of myself in any real meaningful way. I really put all that weight on myself that there must be something I'm doing wrong, that my kid is acting this way, that I'm not able to balance it all. I've been taught, for years and years, if you just give it your all, then you'll be able to do anything. And I found that that message wasn't really true. And I remember this one night, I was in the shower. I'd had a really long week of work meetings. And I also was trying to take care of my daughter. She'd had a really severe outburst and meltdown. And my youngest daughter, it felt like, was left in the dust. And I remember just melting down in the shower and sobbing and just being on my knees and feeling like there must be some better way. I've lost my joy. I'm completely out of alignment. My husband and I are constantly fighting because we're both at odds trying to create a life that's semi-happy. And that really was a turning point for me. It's when I decided that I can't control everything, but I can control where I place my priorities. I can control where I focus my attention and my time and my energy. And that part of that has to be back on me, because if I'm thriving, that's the only way that my kids are going to thrive, my work's going to thrive, that my life is going to be in a thriving position. So of course it wasn't overnight, but over time, in working with experts, in talking with other working moms, in interviewing psychologists, and really doing a ton of research, this framework emerged that was about sustainable alignment for moms, about how to actually make motherhood work and how to help parents from losing themselves in the first place from the beginning, or to help them find themselves if they felt like they were completely lost. So you can give a thumbs up or a, oh yes, if that is you too, if you resonate with any of those feelings, because again, you are not alone if you do. So what I always tell people when I talk about my framework, and I think this is really important, is that I can't promise you a perfect life, right? I think hopefully we're beyond the era from, the early 2000s, even 1990s, of this idea of like manifesting like perfect parenthood or a perfect experience. My kids still have meltdowns. I still have bad days, right? I sometimes don't get the business news that I want to get. So life is definitely not perfect. And I think it's a complete lie to sell you that anything can make it so your life is. But I will say that life is a lot more manageable now, and that day to day, moment to moment, it is a lot more hopeful. So I can't promise you perfection. I can't promise you like a billionaire's mansion on a hill as a result of this framework, but I can promise you a life that's centered and successful in the true definition of the word, a life that's self-attuned, that's prioritized, that's purposeful, and that is sustainable. And to me, a life that's centered and successful at work and at home starts with having a centered vision. It starts with understanding where you want to go. What would a life that is aligned with your values and your priorities really look like for you? And I'll tell you that in my centered vision of like in 5-10 years, how will I spend my time, my energy, my focus? How will I clear away distractions and focus most of my energy on those things? I always get this picture in my mind of me sitting on a balcony. I'm always looking out at an ocean. And I always have these like super cheap white Target drapes. I have no idea why they're from Target, but they always are from Target. I can tell, like there's like a price tag on them still, or that little like, Magnolia hearth or whatever tag on them, say that they're from Target. And I'm always looking out onto the ocean, and my kids are coming to and fro. They're walking down to the beach, and then they're coming back toward me and they're giving me a hug. I'm always linked arms with other women of all different shapes and forms and sizes and ethnicities. And I'm at peace. I'm sitting there. I have a coffee mug, and it's the type of coffee mug, like I didn't need it to be energized. I have it because it's like that ritual coffee mug, right? You know what I'm talking about. There's a difference between like, oh my gosh, give me the coffee, or I'm sitting here, I'm relaxed, I'm at peace, I'm well rested, I don't feel anxious inside of me. Okay, so that's it. When I think about my centered vision, and in our longer seminars that we do at Modern Mommy Doc, we do like a 20-minute actual visioning exercise, but here I'm giving you the short version. When I think about my centered vision, it's that simple. And the thing is, I do not expect my entire life in 5 years, that's what I'll do, that I'll be like sitting there just on the balcony, not doing any type of work, not having anything else that comes into my life. But those images represent what I want to be doing. So the image of my children going out into the ocean or down to the beach and then come back to me represents that really secure attachment with me, that they're able to be independent, but they're also able to come back to me, that we have a wonderful relationship. The linking arms with other women represents me really contributing to other women on their journeys, on their motherhood journeys, like I do at Modern Mommy Doc. That cup of coffee and that calm and rested really represents physical wellness and mental wellness, that I'm in, a great spot in terms of being able to really give because I have received in terms of what I need on rest and nutrition and exercise. The looking out onto the ocean represents for me, I'm exploring, I'm always learning new ideas. I have new business ventures. I'm learning about different cultures and different types of women and how can I help people in different areas. And so that's a key part for me of what I want to be doing. And then there's also a piece of having some security for me about finances. I will share a little bit later about my journey there, but I want to make sure that I have some financial security. And again, not in like a millionaire, billionaire type of way, but in a way that's not weighed down by debt and by worry constantly, that I feel like I have financial literacy and I'm able to act on that. Now, your centered vision, your vision of what in 5 to 10 years in an ideal world you would be spending your time on might look very, very different than mine. Everyone has their own idea and their own version of what would make them significantly more aligned than they are today. In the middle of the center, you'll see in this graphic that's on your screen, is that centered vision. So the circle represents the centered vision, which we all have uniquely. And then those 5 areas, the 5 pieces of the pie represent those different, what we call at Modern Mommy Doc, center points. So yours will be very different than mine. Mine are health, family connection, financial freedom and literacy, contribution, and then that exploration, right? It might be world travel, it might be learning about different things. Every single person has their own version. Now, the most important thing to understand, though, is if we want to redefine where we place our time, our energy, our focus, we have to also understand all of the other aspects of life that don't fall into that circle, right? Super nice that I want to spend all my time contributing to other women, but who's going to be doing the laundry, right? Who's going to pay the bills? Who's going to pay the taxes, right? We all just recently paid our taxes. So we have to address what's outside the circle. And what's outside the circle are all of the things that have to get done, but that shouldn't define us. So everything that you see in this graphic, that is in the square, but not inside the circle. And what's outside the circle, but inside the square, is what's holding you back from spending time, energy, and focus on your centered vision and your center points. And we have to ask ourselves, right, if the middle of the circle, if that circle area is where we actually want to be, where we want to spend our time, why would we spend any time? Why would we stay outside the circle, right? And I think you already know the answer to this in kind of like theoretical terms, right? It's because we have to pay the bills. It's because we have to do the laundry. It's because motherhood and parenthood is chaotic. It's hard to spend time. It's because we have this whole thing in the US about productivity being a measure of success. Sometimes we get caught up in our checklists of I have 10 errands to run and none of them make any difference, but it makes me feel really good to have checked something off a list at the end of the day. There's mom guilt. There's institutional and social bias, right? Very, very real factors that keep us locked outside of the circle and inside the square. Right? We know with the pandemic over the past several years, that has been parents who have really suffered as they've tried to figure out about needs like childcare. Moms have suffered as they have been traditionally lower paid than men across the US. And so they were more likely to leave their jobs to take care of their kids, right? That makes it harder to pursue your dreams, your passions, and to stay in alignment. So I want to make sure that I address that and make sure that you understand that I understand those are very real issues. At Modern Mommy Doc, we love to pair up with teams that are working on those specific issues, the systemic issues. Groups like Paid Parental Leave, Totem Women, Eve Rodsky, a whole group of people who are really pushing for more systemic change, not just for moms, but for parents in general. So we have to ask ourselves, okay, there are factors that would keep us outside the circle. There are real draws inside the circle. Do we live most of the time inside or outside? And at Modern Mommy Doc, we like to do this by completing what we like to call the Center Audit. So we ask, how closely does your ideal life or this more aligned life fit with your match, your real one, right? And one of the most important exercises that I've ever done in my entire life was done in a bar on a cocktail napkin with one of my very good friends. Her name is Christy. She's an HR executive. And she sat me down. This was in a period where I was having a really rough time. And she said, you know, here's a list of 9 things that people spend their time and energy on. I want you to rank them in an ideal world as to how much time or like what priority you would give to each of these. And they were things like exercise and stress reduction, kids, travel and experiences, hobbies, partner, friendships, homemaking, appearance, work, right? Where would you spend your time? And so I number them out 1 through 9. At the top of my ideal list was exercise and stress reduction and kids. At the very bottom of my list was work, which was my current work that I was doing at that time, which is just seeing patients. And it wasn't because I don't love seeing patients. It was because it was just so grueling with the time. And then she said, okay, I want you to take that list and make a reality list and reorder them according to where do you spend time? Because the ideal list is like where I want to be. Reality list is where I am now. And on the reality list, work was at the very, very top. Homemaking, like laundry, dishes, was at the very, very top. Exercise and stress reduction was at the very, very bottom. Travel, experiences, kind of that exploration piece of myself was at the very, very bottom. And even though it was just a cocktail napkin discussion, that really shed a light for me on how, of course, none of us are going to live in a fairy tale world, but that I was completely out of alignment with where I actually wanted to be, that there had to be some way to at least bring myself to the middle of those 2 lists. And the way to do that, I discovered as I created this framework, was really to deal with what's outside the circle. And what's outside the circle, which you can see on this graphic, are the non-negotiables, the swappables, the contaminators, and the heartstrings. So I'm going to go through each of these so that you can find out a little bit more about what they are and also very real practical solutions for what you can do about them. Okay, so the non-negotiables are the things that you have to do even when you don't want to do. So these are tasks that require efficiency and productivity. We have to get them done, but we want to get them done with as little time or effort as possible. So if you are a single parent, this might be laundry for you. If you are a working person, this might be answering emails that are inconsequential at your office, checking your emails. This might be ordering supplies for your business, right? Things only you can do if you're a solopreneur, or if you're a single parent, or if you are in a specific role in your job. For me, for example, this is writing notes as a physician. I have to write my own notes, but there are some ways to make it so that it doesn't take up all my time. and I have more time for actually doing the work of seeing patients, which I care significantly more about when I'm at the office. So the solution here is to create systems and rely on smart organizational tools that make it easier for you to accomplish the task. This is where productivity and efficiency come in. This is like, for example, if you're the only person in your house that makes meals, streamline meal prep, right? Like I am going to be making in my household chicken kebabs, French bread, and some broccoli for dinner. If I'm in charge of dinner, it's not going to be a gourmet meal, right? I have to get it done if like my husband was out of town for that week, but I don't have to let it take all my time and energy and be stressful. This is where technology like apps and organizers come into play, like a notebook for brain dumps, single tasking, spending your time just doing something right in one moment focused versus multitasking. We know actually, side note, the science is so clear that multitasking is actually like really, really bad for you. And that moms in particular, but parents in general, talk night and day about how they're amazing multitaskers. And actually it's not true. Women who are parents actually have developed a skill of task switching, which means they can switch from one task to the next really efficiently. So I can help Johnny with homework and then I can do dinner, then help Johnny with homework again. But the problem is that's actually very, very exhausting for the brain. So I always encourage moms to rethink that idea of task switching, multitasking, and asking, is it giving me energy or is it actually draining me? This area also, the solution is about setting times for tasks throughout the week. So if you are the laundry person in your house, then that would mean maybe laundry only happens from 7 to 9 p.m. on a Thursday. That's how we do it in my house. I don't do laundry any other time than that. I might run it through the wash and dry cycle, but I don't put anything away or fold other than 7 to 9 on Thursdays, so that way it has a discrete moment within the week and it feels like it's not a constant task that's piling up on me. This is where selective mediocrity comes in. This is a phrase that my friend Denise Hamilton coined that talks about how sometimes actually doing something in a less than amazing, excellent way is the better way to do it. So for example, if you are the person who's assigned for your daughter's cookie sale to be bringing cookies, that you're going to go to the store bakery and purchase some for $1.99 versus make them at home if you were a working parent, right? Absolutely no reason why you should go to the nth degree on things that actually are inconsequential in the end. Now, I want to bring up that a lot of times people will talk about productivity and efficiency, right? There's some new books out there like Atomic Habits or 7 Habits of the Most Efficient or Effective People. And they start there, but they end there. And that is a problem. There is a place and a time for really focusing on our habits and being more productive and efficient, but that's not the only solution for all the things that happen in our lives that shouldn't define us. The other areas really matter too. So the next area that I want to talk about is the swappables. And you can see that there on your screen. These are the things that have to get done, but that someone or something else can do for you. So I know some of you were thinking when I talked about meal prep or about laundry, like, well, I could get somebody else to do that. 100%, right? If your kids are old enough, I know as a pediatrician that getting your children involved in chores and household tasks is actually really important for them, not just to teach them grit, but actually to teach them community and ownership and belonging. We know that that's actually a skill that carries forward as they get into adulthood. We know that building equity between parenting partners, so if you're parenting with someone else, also is an amazing example for our kids, but also reduces the resentment and the anger that so many parents feel toward their partners and kind of that sense of animosity within a household. And if you're looking for a great resource here, Eve Rodsky's book, Fair Play, is one of my favorites as an actual system for how to do this. If you're a single parent, you might be thinking, well, I don't have another partner that I can share this with. The solution might be swapping things out with someone in your parenting village. There are a lot of moms and dads that I have in my community that I say, hey, can I watch your kids for a play date while you go run errands and then we can swap the other day? Or I have one gal who I know who sometimes is able to pick up my kids when I get into a big kind of patient situation at work and I can't skip out, but then I will do something for her. So there are ways, absolutely, no matter what your economic, socioeconomic level, whatever your parenting situation is and setup is, to be able to create things where you can swap out tasks or responsibilities that you might otherwise take on for yourself. So again, this could look like shared responsibility with a partner, with caregivers, with a parent village. This could look like takeout or prepped meals, right? Like having someone else completely do it for you, so outsourcing. This could look like a kid chore list. This could look like help with house cleaning. This could look like automatic bill pay. And I want to take a second to address that sometimes in these types of conversations, we get caught up in like, well, that's only for the rich and famous, or that's not for people who have a low socioeconomic level. And of course, is it easier for a billionaire to throw money at things and have other people take care of their dirty to-do list that they don't want to do? 100%, right? But we all have people in our lives that we can be thoughtful about sharing with, sharing the load with. And if we don't have those people, then it really is about starting to do the next area outside the circle. The next area is called the contaminators. And these are things that you think you have to do and want to do, but in reality, you hate doing them and they don't fall within the circle. These are like all of the obligations, tasks and commitments that tend to fill up your schedule, but that don't have to be accomplished. Stuff in your house that you think you need, but that actually doesn't serve you. And these things eat up your time and your family's time and keep you unnecessarily busy. So for example, in my house, about a month ago, we went through a major overhaul of our stuff. I cleared out probably 30% of the toys and of the extra clothes, and we donated them or we swapped things with other families, because I found that I kept on going around and around my house and picking up the same things over and over and getting more and more irritated, and that my kids weren't enjoying their toys as much, and that we were just basically living way too much of a cluttered existence. And those things build up over time. That's very normal. This isn't the first time that I've done this, right? But creating minimalism really allowed me actually to free up a lot of time and a lot of mental energy. When I looked around my environment, I wasn't exhausted. We can do the exact same thing with our schedules. We all have things we commit to that really we should be saying no to, right? That extra committee at work that someone asks you to be on, but it really doesn't fit your skill set. It's not in alignment with your talents. The PTA meeting that they asked you to be a part of, but you really wanted to say no to. That third extracurricular activity for your kids that you signed them up for because you wanted to keep up with the Joneses. But in reality, if they are like the number one student in their class, does it really matter? Or does it matter that they're actually just learning and growing and happy at school? So the solution here is minimalism. It's auditing your calendar. It's auditing your physical space and seeing, where can I eliminate? Not because I want to be stark and have absolutely nothing going on, not because I want to keep things, boring or not have friendships for my kids or not be involved at work, but because I know when I say no to these things, I can say yes to the center of my circle. Finally, the heartstrings. These are things that you have to do, you want to do, or at least you think you want to do, but they don't fall within the circle. These are tasks that are important to you, but they aren't necessarily part of the ultimate vision for your life. And the best example that I can think of for this is grandparents, right? Most of us have them. And I love my parents. I want to spend time with them. And also, I have a special needs kiddo. And when we don't do set up family events, holidays, right? Yesterday or a couple days ago, which is Easter. If we don't make it, okay, it's going to be from 12 to 5. We're going to make the food simple. We're going to show up. If McKenna wants to go listen to her audiobook and play with a puzzle the whole time and kind of not be with the rest of us, but that keeps her from having a huge meltdown and we can enjoy, then we all go home. That's going to have to be how it is, right? So those are heartstrings. I want to make sure that I'm taking care of my parents. I want my other daughter to have a good time. And I have to make decisions that meet my needs and everybody's needs. And this solution is about setting boundaries. It's about really identifying, how do you set a healthy boundary? Why have I had trouble setting boundaries in the past? What can I do about it? What am I going to do if somebody crosses a boundary? And by the way, at Modern Mommy Doc, we have an entire session on this, entire workbook on this. We know that it is not easy to set boundaries, especially for moms. So in addition to all those things that keep us outside the centered circle that are about societal things that we can't really control, there are all of these four corners of this box that definitely keep us handcuffed. And so we have to deal with them. But then as we're saying no to all these things, or having selective mediocrity, or saying, I'm going to swap this to somebody else, you have to also understand like what's in the center, what's at stake. And what's at stake, what's in the center of the circle is you. It's your well-being. It's your peace. It's you having a lack of resentment. It's you not being angry all the time. It's you not having a running list in your head all night long. And placing yourself at the center of your circle is what keeps you centered. How do you do that? Okay, number one, you attend to the basics. This gives you a fighting chance. And I'm talking about like sleep, water, exercise, right? All those basic things. If you are the parent of a new baby, like, I'm so sorry, because I know that there are moments in life where this is difficult just to get to the basics. But what I would say is, please tell your family and friends, like, what I need is sleep, food, and rest, right? And then have them bring those types of things for you. So that's what you are focused on. For the rest of us, we can do this. It just takes a mindset shift. The second way to place yourself in the center of your circle is to give yourself a daily self-care ritual so you have a foundation. This doesn't have to look fancy. This could look like 5 minutes of a guided meditation with an app. I like the Mindful Mamas app. That's my favorite one for parents. This could be 5 minutes in the shower with you just having your favorite music on, right? Bieber for me. This could be 5 minutes of you journaling. What are your thoughts and feelings? Brene Brown talks about this all the time, just setting aside 5 minutes of time every single day where you are just journaling, maybe events that have happened in the past day, or just getting in tune with what are my feelings, what are my needs. And then finally, a weekly self-care plan that gives you space, right? I don't want to be too prescriptive on this because I think everyone has their own limitations and their own thing that works for them. For me, it works to have 3 separate times a week where I know I will get an hour to myself or with friends. This could look like you're exercising. This could look like a good book on the couch. Again, free, right? Not costly. This could look like you having a picnic date at the park with your friend. This could look like a date with your partner, right? Whatever it is that brings you back to that creative and energetic part of yourself, and that really gives you that drive then to keep on going. And then finally, I talked about this in the very beginning, this self-compassion, a commitment to self-compassion, that is what teaches you to trust yourself. The other parts, the having enough rest, giving yourself a daily ritual and a weekly ritual, helps you remember to get to know yourself, to be like, oh, hey, self, I remember who you are now. The self-compassion commitment teaches you to trust yourself. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with self-compassion, this was developed by Kristen Neff. She is an amazing PhD psychologist that talked about this idea of basically adults learning how to emotion coach themselves. So if you guys have a toddler or older, you guys might know this infographic or this kind of model from Tina Payne Bryson, who I know is going to speak with you guys soon, who talks about how we all have this kind of emotional piece of our brain and we have a more like logical piece of our brain. And for kids, when they get really kind of out of sorts and they're like all anxious or they're pent up, phew, that really logical part of their brain flips out and they're just stuck with the emotions. Well, that actually happens for adults too, right? And so when we get really resentful, when we've been doing too much, when we've been carrying the load, when we lose ourselves, we get all anxious, we get all depressed, we get joyless, right? And phew, we react, right? We then maybe yell at our kids when we don't mean to, or we are so burnt out that we have physical ailments like headaches or palpitations. It comes out somewhere. And so for kids, as a pediatrician, I'm always teaching them, how can you give yourself grace basically in the moment? When you feel really, really fired up, how can we name the emotion? Okay, I feel angry. How can we validate it? It's normal to feel angry. And then how can I have some common humanity? Anyone would feel angry in that situation. Jojo took your toy. I totally understand. And we can do that for ourselves too. We can say to ourselves, oh, you're really frustrated that your kids are fighting right now. That makes so much sense. Any mom in the whole world would feel so frustrated. You are not alone, right? For me, any mom who had a kid who was really spiraling out like that would feel like she's about to lose it. And that allows us to then trust, like, oh, I'm actually okay. There's nothing wrong with me. I just have needs and emotions like any human. We know that our emotions drive our needs drive our priorities. So once we know ourselves and trust ourselves, once we've dealt with everything outside the circle, then we can start to address our center points, the points in the middle of our circle, the points that we really want to spend time on. And some of these points might be things that you already are in process on, right? Like a strong relationship with my kids. I'm always working on that. But there might be other parts that you actually need to set some goals on. Like, if I want to be contributing to women, how am I going to do that? Okay, I'm going to maybe start a blog, then I'm going to maybe start a podcast, then I'm going to maybe start doing some speaking, right? And those goals are going to take specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time-sensitive steps. So SMART goals, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard of. And I want to share another brief secret that I alluded to in the beginning, which is that as I went on this journey, one thing that was really holding me back, and most people do have one linchpin that's holding them back, was this financial situation. My husband and I had both gone to grad school. We both had amassed a huge amount of student debt. I had $250,000 or some odd of student debt. And I thought about that constantly. So I had to first address that financial literacy and security piece of things before I could move on anything else, because that linchpin center point was actually taking up so much bandwidth and space. I didn't have time to focus on anything without having a lot of feelings about it. So goal number one for me there was no consumer student loan debt in 3 years. Then I had a mini goal, right? And some barriers I had to accomplish. Like, okay, then I'm gonna only bring sack lunches. And we actually moved to my parents' house and spent a whole year there and rented out our home so that way we could pay off a significant amount of the debt. Okay, we might have to change childcare or schools for that year. So we had to consider all of those pieces. And then once we did that piece, we were able to move on to all the others. So as I had more bandwidth from a financial standpoint, I was able then to really start really honing in on that relationship with my kids, even more than I had before, and setting some goals about what I wanted to do, like reduce screen time and more special time together. And then I started spending more time on the business side of things and what I wanted to do with contributing to moms. And that center part of me showed me, okay, where should I place my time and attention? What should I do when I start feeling conflicted between the work needs that I have and these things outside the circle, the non-negotiables, the heartstrings, the swappables, the contaminators? Oh, better bring my focus back in, because instead of beating myself up constantly with no self-compassion, now I had that. And instead of not knowing what I even wanted, I was spending time with myself, getting to know myself again. And I had a very clear, centered vision of exactly where I was trying to go. So in closing, I want to talk about Alyssa real quick. Alyssa was a mom who came to me for some coaching. She had 3 kids, a toddler, she had a 8th grader, and she had a 3rd grader. And she worked as a pharmaceutical rep. And she told me that she felt like she was just constantly failing. And even though she was trying to do it all, she was really doing nothing well. And after we started moving from this conflicted state to this centered life framework, she has reported, and I'm so glad to report to you guys that she has gone to a place where she feels like every single day she wakes up with a renewed sense of hope, of energy, and of excitement about not just where her life is going, but where her kids are going too, because they see their mom thriving and they have that example lifelong. So a centered life, it makes you a whole grounded individual. It's making Alyssa a whole grounded individual who knows what she wants, but also knows what she needs and knows how to deal with it when there are different pulls on her focus and attention that don't align with what she actually wants to be spending time, energy, and focus on. In the end, it makes her a better parent and it makes her a more effective professional. And I want to make sure that other parents don't just get the framework, because I think the framework is exciting, but that they also have the support and resources to be able to do this in a way that takes them on a journey that sustains them for their whole life. I know it's possible to have huge success at work and at home, but I know that it doesn't just happen like that, right? It takes practice, it takes support, and it takes some accountability. And so I'm excited once we kind of close out here as we're doing the question and answers, I will put our Modern Mamas Club app that we just launched in the chat, because we're thrilled to be able to offer a way for parents to really go from that conflicted state to centered state in a stepwise fashion, to have challenges along the way, to have the support they need. And I want you to be able to find out more about it, because this is just a starting place. I know that I was looking for a solution to that constant inner conflict for so long, and that I didn't just want it, I was desperate for it. And the more I talk to other parents, I know they are too, because the way that the world is set up is really not to support parents. And so that work in the end has to come from working on systemic problems, but also from the inside out for all of us, and giving us the agency to create change and to have control over the things that we can control, no matter what stressors come our way. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Whitney. Really, I think, first of all, as many people commented along the way, thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing your journey and yourself. I think it really makes it identifiable, not like you're this not touchable human that is experiencing the same things that a lot of people are. So before I jump into the Q&A, I just wanted to let everybody know that we're gonna put a poll into the Q&A, I think. There it is, just to give us a little insight on where you're coming from. And if you would just take a moment to do that, that would be great. And then I'm just going to run to a couple of questions while we have time. So what is the best way to make sure that your kids know you love them more than your job, even though sometimes you have to miss their activities and your attention, you're distracted because of work?
100%. Okay, so first of all, I want to say to anyone who's a working parent here, it's totally fine to love your job, right? Like, I love my job and my kids know it. And I think that actually is really important for them to understand that adults have a life outside of them, right? So that's okay if you love your job. Number 2, I think the most important thing we can do for our kids is give them attunement. And that's the most important thing we can do for ourselves too, right? That's why we do those daily practices and the weekly. It's really attuning to oh, you're important. I'm going to give you my undivided attention. And for our kids, that's what that means too. We call that special time in pediatrics. And it can be 5 to 10 to 20 minutes a day or every other day, every couple of days of just, you're sitting with them, they're in charge, they get to pick the activity, they are the leaders. You are not giving them a bunch of negative feedback or like, oh, didn't you want to play with this red crayon instead of the blue crayon, right? It's all about them. And you are really paying attention to what they're doing. When they're younger, when they're babies, this could be like you're just looking in their eyes and swaying them. When they are toddlers, this could be you're playing with your LOL dolls with them, even though you don't want to, right? When they are teenagers, this could be you're going on a walk with them maybe, and you're like side by side and they're just talking about whatever they want to, or you're just sitting in their room while they are playing a video game and saying, could I just sit here with you? And I want to just be with you. So it comes in many ways, shapes, or forms. But I think most important is just that we're saying to your kids, I've set aside some special time to be with you. I want to be just with you right now.
Thank you. And while I go to the next question, there are a bunch of people who have asked, could you list those 9 items again?
9 items.
Stress reduction, exercise, travel. It was your
Oh yeah. Yeah. I can. And you know what we can do? If you're going to send the presentation or, send the video, let's send them that too. We can send them just that slide. So that way they see it. Or we can do a PDF of the slides and send that out too. I think that might be helpful.
Perfect.
But they were exercise and stress reduction, appearance, working at home, like homemaking. They were your job, they were travel or exploration, being with your partner and being with your kids, excuse me. And actually, you know what we'll do for this presentation, we will send our entire manual to you guys as a PDF. So that way you can email that out with this. And that way you guys can see the entire thing. It's also available on the app. It like goes in a sequential form. So it's every single day. It gives you like 2 or 3 pages and the videos that go along with it.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Here's a good question. Can you share a bit about how women, mainly moms, are deliberating about returning to work and how they could effectively use this framework?
Yeah, 100%. So I think it's helpful, one, in just that decision point. What matters most to me? Where do I want to spend my time? And what is an energy drain for me? What is an energy giver to me, right? So in career coaching, a lot of career experts talk about this. Like, okay, what are the things that I really want? I want freedom. I want recognition from my peers. I want like this financial thing. I want to have like a schedule that's flexible, right? So you can look, and Brene Brown actually has a great list of all of the different values that you can assess to see what are the values that I have, and then where does that fit within the center circle? Where do I want to spend my time? That might mean for a season, you're not at work, right? That might mean that you're like at home right now, that you're like, it might mean that you say, you know what, actually, there is a part of work that I love. And so that part I don't want to give up, but I need it to be flexible, or I need it to be remote. And I will tell you, this is the moment, mamas, let me get on my like little soapbox, to be to our employers. I need it to be flexible. Employers are looking for employees. They're understanding more than ever. They're becoming more woke to the idea that we all have lives. We all have families. And so people have seasons of their lives. So if you're looking to do that, the other place I would say to look is Center for Paid Parental Leave. They are excellent. If someone is looking to do like a short-term leave and then potentially come back, they're really excellent at helping employers and individuals to figure that out too. So I think you can use this framework if you're working, if you're not working, or if you're deciding what type of work do I want to do, or what do I want that mix to be.
Great. This falls under the rubric of sibling rivalry.
Yeah.
And Jacqueline asks, how can I best handle the constant competition to prove who's best in my eyes amongst my children?
Oh, I feel you. This is such a hard one. So having a kid with autism, the other child constantly feels like, I guess I must not be as special because I don't get as much attention. That's always a thing I'm battling. I never want her to feel like that. So I think that individual special time is really important. I think that really setting it up for your kids as much as possible, like, just because it's not equal doesn't mean it's not fair. That like in life, it might be that for a a weekend. I'm taking this little one to go with me to like a beach place. And that like this weekend, I'm going to be doing a camping trip with you, right? Like that letting them know I love you equally. I have enough room in my heart for both of you. It's like a Boss Baby reference. I have enough room in my heart for both of you. And I love you. I could never stop loving you. I have so much love in my heart. And then I think you do have to trust that process of like, if you're clear about giving them individual time and you're clear about, I promise that you don't want it to be equal. You just want it to be fair. You will get more out of me if it's not equal, if it's just fair. That's better. And I think my kids have started to see that. And I definitely preach that in my office, and my family see that as well, that it's better to really think about like what quality thing will fit this person's needs.
That's great. I want to add at the end, you brought up the word attunement, which, has so much to do with relationship and attachment. And I've heard it a lot lately in reading and listening to things about trauma, and adding in that time that you're suggesting that parents devote to their kids, and, huck your phone.
Yes.
Do that dance with them. So attunement really means you're not just with them, and you're not just side by side with them, but you really are attuning and doing that dance so that they really, really feel your presence is just such a grand piece of wisdom.
Absolutely. I turn off my phone completely because I'm too distracted by it otherwise, for an hour at a time in chunks every day. And then when I'm really feeling restless and I'm sitting there, I'll turn on my phone, but I'll put on a soundtrack that I like and have it like in another room with the Bluetooth playing. So if that's you and you need a little bit of background noise because it's just like killing you to be so quiet with your kid, that's cool too. You can do that.
No, that's terrific. So I'll close with this question, and it's particular for you, as you've mentioned, having some neurodiversity issues. This mom says, what about balancing your neurodiverse child? Is it best to work part-time or full-time? Of course, that's really personal. I have several options. Just how do you help provide a framework for making those tough decisions?
Totally. So I think the framework has to be, first of all, the work that I do doesn't need to be done full time for me to do it to the full level that I want to do it. So for me, for example, I don't need to work full time in order to be a doctor. I could work a day a week and I'm still a doctor, right? So like if you have a job where if you work part-time, it's not going to like make it so you can't make it a career advancement later, or it's going to keep your foot in the door, then I think working part-time is an excellent choice. And again, more than ever, I think also thinking about, will working full-time versus part-time drain or energize you again? So like, if you know that actually working full-time will make it so that when you come back on the weekends or in the evenings, you have more energy to spend on your child, then that's what I would do. I actually think that's the best thing to do for you and your child. So I don't work full-time in my office anymore, but I definitely work full-time, during Modern Mommy Doc plus the office. And I know I'm a better mom to my child because throughout the day, I'm not just hanging out, like attending to her whims, than I would be if I was working part-time. And also because it kind of forces the issue of me having to have additional caregivers that are part of the picture. So it's not just on me. And I think that's so important. As moms, we have it entrenched in us that it should be all about us. And it really can't be for it to be successful.
Phenomenal. I'll land on the note quoting my 3.5-year-old grandson, who said to his amazing care provider, Ranga, I love you. You're so important to me, which only made his mother feel so great that he was attuned to her in that way. And he has another phenomenal role model and caretaker. Anyway, before I say goodbye, and most importantly, thank you, I just want to encourage everyone on to join us. We have Tina Payne Bryson, and you can just look that up on ParentMap, the Yes Brain, coaching our kids from reactivity to receptivity. So join us, and thank you so very much for making yourself available and sharing your wisdom and knowledge.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.
Thank you.